The smell of rust and old palm oil hit me first, but it was the sound that made my blood run cold. It was a rhythmic, scraping sound, like a heavy metal chain being dragged across a rough concrete floor, coming from inside my grandfather's locked room. The thing is, the sound didn't stop when I pressed my ear to the door. It only got faster, and then a deep, guttural sigh whispered through the keyhole, "You are mine now, little runner." I'm 24, a student in Lagos, and I've always scoffed at ghost stories. Until last week. My grandpa, Baba, is a very traditional man. He lives in our family compound in Ibadan. He's a powerful man in the community, a chief, but also a priest of the Orisha Ogun. Ogun is the spirit of iron, war, and the hunt. He's respected, but also feared. You do not mess with anything related to him. Baba has a room, a small shed attached to the main house, that's always locked. He calls it the abode of iron. It's where he keeps his Ogun objects, metal tools, an old machete, and this massive, rusted iron thing that looks like a man-sized cage or a suit of armor folded in half. He always says, it is the chain that binds the wildness. Never, ever touch it. 3 days ago, Baba had to travel quickly to a funeral in the village. He gave me the keys to his house, but pointed a very stern finger at me. Do not go into the abode. If anything calls to you, ignore it. Wait for me. That night is when the trouble started. The house was quiet, and I was scrolling through my phone when the temperature in the living room just dropped. I felt a cold wind, but all the windows were shut. Then came the smell, that sharp, coppery smell of hot iron and fresh blood. It made my stomach turn. I froze, heart hammering. The smell was definitely coming from the direction of the locked room. I stood up slowly and walked down the hallway. I could hear a faint clanking noise, like two pieces of metal tapping together, getting louder as I got closer. I reached the door of the abode. The metal handle was freezing cold, even though it was a hot night. I put my ear to the wood. That's when I heard the dragging, scraping sound and the whisper I wrote about in the earlier. I ran. I didn't stop until I was outside the compound gate, hailing a taxi. I stayed at a friend's place in the city, but the image of the dragging metal and the voice in the keyhole wouldn't leave my head. The next day, I couldn't ignore it. I had to know what I heard. I went back to the compound in the afternoon. The room was silent. No smell. Just a locked door. But on the ground, right beneath the gap under the door, I saw a thin, coppery red line. It looked like dried mud, but it had that metallic scent. It wasn't there when I left. I picked up the key that Baba gave me. My hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I pushed it into the lock, turned it, and slowly opened the door. The room was dark. My eyes adjusted. The walls were lined with old tools. And there, in the center, was the huge, rusted iron object, the folded cage. I didn't step in. I just looked. And that's when I saw it. The massive iron cage was now unfolded. It stood upright, like a suit of armor that was too big for any man. The top was jagged, like teeth. And on the floor, trailing from its base to the keyhole, was a clear, fresh trail of thick, sticky palm oil, mixed with something dark red. The cage was no longer bound. It was standing. I didn't wait. I locked the door, put the key in a clay pot, and immediately left a message for my grandfather that I was staying away until he got back. He returned this morning. He hasn't asked me why I left. He just gave me a long, sad look. He walked straight to the abode. I heard him singing a chant in Yoruba, his voice cracking with fear. Then I heard a violent, rattling crash from inside the room, followed by the sound of metal being pounded deep into the concrete floor. When he came out, he was pale and sweating. He looked at me, and his eyes were full of tears. Ogun demanded to hunt, he whispered. You are safe now, my son. But I had to pay his price in new iron and blood to chain the wildness again. He hasn't explained what he meant. He just told me not to worry. But the rusted iron thing is back in the center of the room. And underneath the keyhole, where the dark trail was, the concrete is now deeply cracked and stained black. I am sleeping at a friend's house tonight. I don't know what Ugon wanted, or what my grandfather promised it. But I know that the iron spirit knows my voice, and it knows my name. I just hope the chain holds. What should I do? Should I tell my uncle or a family elder? Boba is acting like nothing happened, but that thing was standing up.